I just realized I'm like 30 minutes, 20 minutes short on my memory. How was that? No, just keep talking. You might want to mention who else is present.
Two, 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 two.
Test 1 2 test. Test 1 2 test.
I believe. Of course, Todd is here. He's videoing. Justine may or may not be here. I don't see her, but she was joining us, a member of our steering committee. And with that, I will pass you over to Victoria to tell you a little bit about us. Yes.
Okay. Well, you take over. Don't we'll have fewer people on. Now you want it? Okay. Yeah.
All right, don't we love hybrid events? So yes, my name is Todd Fine with the Coalition. I think the Zoom people could hear. I think the Zoom people could hear everything well, but not everyone here. So I'll just explain a little bit more about the Coalition for the people who are here in attendance. Victoria is district leader for Lower Manhattan, and she is also she is an advocate for affordable housing who's been here since September 11th. And a lot of the members of our coalition are September 11th survivors or people who live in the immediate vicinity of the World Trade Center, who have observed how the neighborhood hasn't met a lot of the promises that were made 20 years ago after September 11th. There was a real, if people remember, there were all of these listening sessions led often by architects and designers who were tasked to envision what the reconstruction of the World Trade Center would be like. And they had dozens of listening sessions here in New York City and around the state. And invariably, there was a demand for equity as part of the tens of billions of dollars that would come to World Trade Center, including affordable housing. And very few of those promises have been fulfilled. As we know, the World Trade Center has become a very hyper-luxury part of the city that seems divorced from its surroundings. The architecture is not something people typically are proud of. I mean, there's some differences about that, but it didn't definitely meet its objectives. So the demand here is that this last site of the World Trade Center, Site 5, that was built with federal funds, that was purchased with federal funds, it's up for grabs. The decision hasn't been made of what it will be. The state government wants it to be a luxury high-rise of about 80 stories. And there was a one-bid negotiation that selected Silverstein and Brookfield to develop this tower. And so the community members, people who cared about the neighborhood, came together and have been advocating that a different perspective be looked at. And part of that is imagining, because we see so much how these architectural images, these imaginings of what is possible, defines what the policymakers can perceive and what the public itself can see as possibilities. So the exercise tonight, from the coalition's perspective, working with these great organizations, Citigroup, the New York Review of Architecture, groups like ours, we don't have the resources to get a KPF to make hundreds of thousands of dollar images. So we need architects and designers to help us envision what will be possible. And so our coalition is using these images, using these thoughts that came tonight, people like Victoria, Carol, all the people that Victoria mentioned, to try to make a different idea possible. And we're hopeful. It might look grim, but we remain hopeful. We think that we have at least the moral case. And tonight we're going to look hopefully at some of the more technical ideas and sort of the architectural images. Many people know Michael Sorkin, who I dealt with about this issue about 4 or 5 years ago, who's probably written more about what the potential for the World Trade Center could be more than anyone else, and also wrote about how it went wrong. And so in some ways for me, I see this activity as in honor of him and his thoughts and his writing on that, and I'm so excited tonight to see what people will come up with. So I guess I'll introduce Citigroup, Michael, and we'll talk about more.
Hi, I'm Violet.
And I'm Michael.
We're two members of Citigroup.
Yeah, and just to say, we are part of Citigroup. Just to say that we're two members of Citigroup and part of this broader collective of people who come together to make up Citigroup.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming. So we are Citigroup, a collective of artists and architects who meet in a space on the Lower East Side. We are deeply committed to the city of the present and of the future. And to that end, we try to envision a role for architects in which we can be engaged in taking responsibility for the form that the city will take going forward.
Yeah, I guess that commitment to the city that Violet is talking about really starts with their name, Citigroup. And we like to say that the city, the C-I-T-Y, is different than the C-I-T-I. And for us, we see the C-I-T-Y as a place where all people can live and is really defined by the public, and it should be a place that supports all people. And something that we hope to do as Citigroup in our collective efforts is to really draw architects into these political and social issues that relate to the future of the city. And by drawing architects into these fights that activists and community organizations are leading, we're really looking for ways as architects for us to use our skills of representation and spatial thinking to support these efforts. And so that's really the effort and the hope of this design, this call for designs related to in support of the 100% affordable 500 coalition.
So the rendering that is that serves as the impetus of the exhibition and issue number 28 of NIRA, that the reaction we have is that these renderings, as Todd alluded to a moment ago, project a very final state, a very believable architectural proposal. And in response to that, we were able to suggest 40 alternatives and sort of shed doubt onto the finality of the KPF rendering.
Yeah, and just to say, we understand that making affordable housing in the city and the future of the 5 World Trade Center site isn't just a question of design, but really what we think is that exactly what Violet said, is that design opens up the possibility of what the future of the city can be. And when you walk around the city every day, you see all of these images that are support developers and the forces of real estate that really define one future for the city. And so the many different images that you see, the many different images that you're going to see today are about breaking up that possibility and opening up many futures for the city.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last introductory remark. I'm Nicholas, representing New York Review of Architecture. 3 things. First, oh yes, but first everybody has to talk directly into the mic, otherwise the people on the streaming can't hear you. And maybe you can't hear me. Second, just raise your hand if you're like an architect or designer participating in the call. Presenters, raise your hands. Raise your hands. Hi. Okay. Activists, neighborhood member of coalition, raise your hands. Cool, great, fantastic. It's neat to have an event that brings the 2 groups together, and I would really like you guys to meet each other, talk to each other, and so I just want to underline that. That's very neat. Second, the format for tonight. It's actually borrowed from the Germans of all things, but what we're going to have is everybody's going to present their design. You're going to have 10 slides, 20 seconds per slide, so having moved very slowly to this point, we're going to move very quickly from here on out. And there's a small chance that if we have the same video issue that we had with Victoria, we have half the presentation, unfortunately, videos. And if we have the same issue with the volume, then we're just going to skip them rather than have everybody sit through silent videos. And for that, I sincerely apologize, but we will make them available later. And the third thing, I'm the publisher of New York Review of Architecture, and so it's incumbent on me to talk about money. Just want to put a few numbers in front of everybody. $250 million was spent on this 5 World Trade Center site. It was not originally 5 World Trade Center, it was originally the Deutsche Bank. The Deutsche Bank was a giant 40-story building. They had to tear it down. They had to spend money tearing it down. They had to spend money acquiring it. They had to spend money making the site usable. So it's already $250 million gone into this project. $1.2 billion is the projected cost of the tower. Carol Lambert, who is right here, had earlier told me that they want to make their own feasibility study so they can have their own numbers, and it's going to cost $20,000. I've talked to, KPF has not responded to any of my questions, but I've talked to people in the profession and they say that they probably build about $100,000 for the design that we see that looks so final on Wikipedia and all of that. I'm just trying to say that the cost of simply putting an idea into the public realm that is viable is actually real. And so we tonight, everybody's done this out of the goodness of their heart and essentially an act of community service, and that is respectful and admirable. But I think something, but something that I want everybody to keep in mind as they advocate for the next steps is that it's important not just to do the work ourselves, but also to advocate to create the resources so that next time there's a $1.2 billion project moving ahead as a civic project, when they put out an RFP, there's actually resources there to generate ideas, to support the generation of ideas, so it's not just whoever has a developer who has a deep banks and can say, yes, of course I can spend $1 million proposing, developing a proposal because the payoff is so large, it makes sense for me. The German example that we're actually modeling this after, it was for a project that was only $50 million, and they had a design competition in which just the ideas design competition had 300,000 euros of prize money available. That's the sort of thing that we should have here too, and that's the sort of thing we hope to aspire to run in the future. And with that, we're going to move right into it. I would like to introduce Nina Rappaport of OE. Again, 10 slides, 20 seconds per slide, and at the end, she's going to show a resolution. You're going to raise a green card or a red card, and you can raise or reject it, and so that we have those. If you don't have a red or green card, I'll pass them around.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here. With Sarah Mountford and also Sarah Gebhardt, graphic designer, for the 5 World Trade Center, we propose combining working and living in a vertical hybrid building. This mix would address the issue of both lack of affordable housing and light industrial space. The ground floor will include large-scale spaces for light industrial workshops relating to the former Electronics Radio Road district of the site's past, where in a city that was a center of electronic production through the 1960s, and people made and repaired products in a very vibrant and mixed neighborhood, both economically, socially, and also even politically. And we propose to make this building, this new concept, for an up-to-date hybrid mix with advanced manufacturing, with new technologies and light industries, so that people can work and live in the same place. We propose this by creating what I've called neo-cottage industries, building on the past of the 19th century, creating micro-factories for the next economy, where spaces would be leased to maybe major companies for assembly of products such as headphones, robots, and 3D printing, using advanced manufacturing technologies that our president has been touting lately, training and employing people who live in the building so that they can learn and make at the same time. With 1,200 units of affordable housing and community spaces on the upper floors, including health centers and shops, as well as vocational schools, this building experiments with a way for each of the different uses to subsidize and support the other, from residential to commercial and retail space, along with light industries that would pay affordable rents and prove to be resilient, economic, and socially. While there are very few examples of current hybrid factories, because of zoning regulations and building regulations that isolates and sequesters industry from living, this proposal attempts to find ways to make a new mix in the city, which is also a project that I'm currently working on. And this new mix can be dynamic, flexible, and sustainable, and also feasible. We need a vision in order to change the way we consider our large-scale developments. Thus, this project for the future, and even if it doesn't get built, I think can create new ideas. It will create a vertical community and a working housing hybrid where light manufacturing, workspace, and housing are combined in an affordable vertical urban factory. Thank you very much.
All right, let's do it. Raise the cards. Oh, great, great. I'm so happy we have reds and greens, but I think the greens are rolling. They have it. So, embraced. Let's go to the next one. So this is the next one is a video. So we're gonna see if whether on the video or not. Yes. I don't know. Maybe introduce yourself. Can you listen? Yes. Take the mask off too.
I'm Niall Greenberg, representing our architecture office, Annie. Underneath you. Architects, that's us, some of us, cannot save New York City through architecture. This is, a kind of question about even the role of this project as a whole, right? The idea that what are architects really capable of in this sort of project, right? I think it's a key question. The heroics of architecture often lead to disastrous decisions. This one, for example, never being built, was really a good thing in the end. And the insistence from a lot of architects that design, the question of design is part of the question of affordability is a bit of a red herring, right? It's there's something missing to that question and distracting us from the sort of policy and origination of how these projects are made. This is like a similar kind of project from the 70s on ideas on how to change housing in New York City and present different design options. This was like a MoMA catalog from the 70s. And it's true that architects' disciplinary skills can marginally improve housing by intelligently organizing quality design principles such as sunlight, unit layout, sort of these fundamental ideas of quality, but these are not the same things as affordable housing, right? There's a certain bar that must be reached to even enter the question of building a building, right? Building an affordable building. And this, these are examples from the 20s and 30s where architects were really invested in the design of public housing and considering quality because policy had already been decided. And policy needs to recognize, firstly, the right to be housed. And we need to introduce stronger governmental regulation, policy. These things come first, right? And it's partially an architect's job to advocate for that, but the reality is there's an insistence on the kind of financialization of housing that is unacceptable and is totally implicated by so many architects. And of course, this all comes down to the grid of Manhattan, the sort of ultimate financial instrument, turning every one of our lives into a monetary and capitalist kind of function. And even the idea of this competition, which our group idea project is, I think, needs to be called into question. And the idea that images alone are worth anything is not key. So our presentation in the end was a sort of grid overlaid where the existing building was, resisting any imagination by an architect to insist that policy comes first.
Okay, cards, let's do it. The architects in say New York City through architecture. It's a concept, yeah. That's a resolution. I think the Greens have the game a little closer that time.
Microphone.
The Greens have again, though it was a little bit closer that time. Let's go to the next one.
We actually might be able to bring the video up.
Oh my God, let's do it. Yeah, let's see what happens.
All right, we're up. Yes, that will next your patience.
The moment of truth approaches.
Over the course of the last 20 years, New York City has faced a staggering increase in homelessness, as well as the need for more affordable housing. During this time, it's also been alarming to see that in places such as Billionaires Row, over the course of the last 20 years, New York City's faced a staggering increase in homelessness, as well as the need for more affordable housing. During this time, it's also been alarming to see that in places such as Billionaires Row, there's been vacancies of almost 20% of unsold or unoccupied spaces. We did this as a starting point of thinking on how do we create a super tall and affordable housing that represents and reminds us of this imbalance between luxury residential and the need for affordable housing. And so by examining 20% as a void within a building, we actually were able to create a void that could become terraced, cascading gardens up the entirety of the building, creating a connection both to the ground plane of the World Trade Center site as well as to the terminus at the very top of what would become a destination for the public or for the actual residents within the building. In doing so, we also think that this void is really a symbol that could be seen from any angle within the city. Again, as an iconic building that would remind all that this is a current issue within housing within the city of New York. We also think that we could capture prefabrication as a means of construction to bolt on floors to a central spine of a core that would enable it to be achievable in a much more affordable and realistic manner within affordable housing. We also wish to provide a passive sustainable solution within a vertical building such as this, encouraging individuals to have outdoor space and not be enclosed within conditioned areas only, and as well as having great views and connectivity to the surrounding skyline. This was something that was a driver within what we believe could be One Planet 2050 compliant, low carbon building. The way the building would connect to the World Trade Center below would be through this stepping gardens in the sky, enabling individuals to see the city at different heights and different views to the surrounding skyline. Overall, the building would become a symbol and a reminder to all of the both social and environmentally responsible building that could house affordable housing within the city of New York.
The cards. Oh my goodness, this is actually going to be a little bit closer. We got, I think the Reds might have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Faces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. Yeah, Reds have it. All right.
And we're loving it. Part of the pole was snapped off. It's laying there. And we brought down the pole. There. Down. Of course, the service panel came down with it. And we got down. It was 25 feet high. Stepped up. Oh yeah, and of course, what do we think of? Damn wood thing. Okay, we'll get a close up of how real the thing is. Those are all holes made with branch fell on the power line. Steel vacuum cable put in the ground. Something had to do, it wasn't the power line.
Hi everyone. It's just me. I'm Brad. My partner Chris lives in Los Angeles and he has COVID right now. Anyway, our project, I want to nail down 3 points. The first is that our design we consider to be fungible and replaceable. The second is that cost optimization in design is a trap. And the third is that architects shouldn't be justifying austerity measures with slick imagery. So we were asked to present our design at the end of the slideshow to show it as the combination of the design process, but I'm going to do it backwards because I think our design is more or less arbitrary. We wanted to design for the kind of spatial and environmental factors that we think that architects are good at advocating for, like generous light and outdoor space, flexible living situations for 1,600 units. So we basically stole our design from a social housing project in Paris that we liked, and we morphed it into the shape of a tower that we think is suitable for the site. Beyond that though, we think our tower is kind of generic and boring and can be exchanged for another design as it needs to be depending on what the program for this project is. So I think in this exercise overall, there's an implication that we need to be making a kind of fiscal case for why we need to be having affordable housing downtown. Nicholas wrote very well about this in the last issue of NYRA about the costs of 5 World Trade Center. He's already said this earlier today that the state has already spent $250 million just on acquiring and clearing the site, but I would go a step further and critique the site overall. In 2002, the New York Federal Reserve, a very liberal organization, calculated that the total cost of earnings losses, property damage, and cleanup of land on the site alone, not including construction of new buildings, was between $33 billion and $36 billion. This was in 2002 money. Then last year, Forbes estimated that the value of buildings 1, 3, 4, and 7 that were built on the site is about $11 billion, of which Larry Silverstein and the Port Authority hold about $3.3 billion of debt through non-taxable Liberty bonds on the project. So that's to say that there's about a $20 billion plus gap in profitability on the site that suddenly Building 5 is being expected to, be in the black on. So, the message is the same as it's always been, that, the costs are to be borne by the state and by the public, and the profits become privatized. When it comes to housing, you're out on your own. So as we talk about this right now, we're having this obvious housing crisis. Public housing in New York City is being privatized, it's being moved into private management, it's being liquidated completely. Rents obviously are going up, I don't really need to say anything about that to you guys. And homelessness is out of control. So right now, just a couple of blocks away from us, there's violent action being taken by the New York City Police Department to vacate homeless people living on the street. Which is the same as has been done in the Lower East Side since the 1980s using tanks and other military equipment that the police department owns. So one of the people who was evicted last month, named Cynthia Anarchy Rowe, she said to WNYC, she said, "Housing is the solution to homelessness. I'm not crazy. I don't need drug treatment. I need affordable housing. We're tired of this trash. When are we going to see housing?" So lack of housing is a structural issue. It's the culmination of a long-term design project at the level of the state intended to move huge volumes of resources away from public space and into private holding. So me and Chris, we want to take a stand as architects and not allow our project to be used to launder brutal austerity measures for us while spending without care on these massive corporate investment projects, but provide a kind of earnest vision for a future that we all want to share and fight for. Thank you.
Recorders! Oh my God, I think that's a full sea of green. All right, crowd pleaser. Wait, one red. We got one red. Good. Okay. The greens have it. Not the next video. Close the gap by hunting the number 3. Yeah. We're not getting the volume.
Amusingly, it is working for the folks on Zoom, which is the opposite of the last few.
Okay, hey, how about let's keep doing the in-person ones, and then we can do all the videos in one go. And that might give us more of a flow. Does that sound? Okay, let's do that. Back to our PDF. Don't be deceived with my design. Yeah. Okay, ESTA of Brownstones and Bobo.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This oddly feels like an open mic, like spoken word for some reason. Yeah. So our project is called Brownstones and Boba. Danny is online working in woodshop right now. She's the more hardworking of the two of us, clearly. I'm Begum Singh Sahani. I am a graduate student of architecture at Pratt, and with Danny, we're classmates, and this is our project. I'm going to wait for the slide because I don't know what to say with that. So, it is a pun on the idea of why our project is called Brownstones and Boba, and we'll come to that because the two of us found ourselves living in New York City, drinking a lot of boba, and well, this project came to us. Now the idea is that what would the new skyscraper of New York really look like? Will it be the birthday cake of Art Deco? Will it be the Natalie Deploy's glass and steel towers? Will it be something like what Herzog and Neuron did, like the Pixel towers? In our case, we kind of were excited by this idea. Well, we live in a brownstone, and that is something that we really appreciate, this idea of the neighborhood, the idea of the stoop. And well, we have to design this really, really tall tower because that's just the way the nature of the site is and the nature of New York is. How do we bleed those two in? And also how do we realize that, how do we create this sense of neighborhood? So is it possible to bleed and create a new brownstone by bleeding in these tapioca balls of brownstones and call it boba? Much like how we drink boba tea. So we went through many, many iterations of how this tower might look like, how we might articulate our design with these intentions. Many of it has to do with the fact that it was more of an aesthetic exercise, and that's what we reached. 5 WTC, 65 floors, 16 residential floors, 1,080 modular housing units which are expandable and changeable, and approximately 10,000 square feet per floor, and 400 of these boba blocks floating in this glass tower. Now the way that this actually kind of looks like is when we reach the plan level. So in our idea of what affordable housing is, that it's actually a shared housing. Now this idea is that, well, it needs to be worth living in. If it's affordable for someone, how do we really attract people to really live in a space like this, and also one that can be suited to the 21st century? Both Danny and me have been living for the last decade with 2 other people. We share kitchens, we share our laundry, we share everything else. So why don't we actually put that into our design and create 3 scales? At the apartment level, we just need a room, perhaps a small kitchen, perhaps a bathroom. And then at the scale of the building, or at the scale of our brownstones, we need the laundry, we need a TV room, we need somewhere to actually sit around and sit with. And we also, at the scale of the urban scale, we need theaters or parks or different things. So when we reach our plan and we reach this idea, a lot of these articulations become shared spaces and how they can be actually used by people who are living in these cluster apartments. And the way that someone would actually see this and be like, well, that's too utopian. Well, this has been done before, and there are many, many examples who have seen it. The Star Apartments by Michael Matzan in LA. There's Sonpa Micro Housing by SSD. Spreefield in Germany has also done a version of this where you have cluster apartments and you have these larger blocks and everyone is sharing it. Now I'm going to steal something from, because I'm from India, so and Danny's half Spanish, half Cuban, and there's a lot of influence that both of us have of neighborhoods and living in these idea of chores, and also this idea from the 20th century hippies and squatters who gave the slogan, make love, not lofts. Now this is also not without precedent that we, the last slide with all these exhibitions that have recently happened. So here's our proposal. An affordable housing is a shared housing, an architecture of the collective where one live, work and play in the urban commons. Make love, not lofts. Thank you.
Greens have it. And now we're gonna skip TWA until later. Is that point? And then, yeah, Ian Mueller.
I'm Ian Mueller from Ian Mueller Architecture. Oh, here we go. It's unrealistic to expect businesses to operate at cost. However, the percentage of profit requires scrutiny to best align to the services provided. This proposal aims to inspire a more egalitarian model for developing housing in the city and how profits can be achieved through a multifaceted approach. The water is rising. Climate change in New York City's low elevation requires us to build up, not down. This is coupled with the high land value that demands a greater density. These two factors make high-rises undeniable the reality for building New York. The question is, how can we design and build in a way that directly benefits the tenants and the community? Let's start with strategic programming. This commercial incubator would incentivize startups and discourage flagship tenants and big box retailers. The residential incubator would attract a more transient population of students and young professionals to allow a younger population a chance to gain a foothold in the city. And the tower would house longer-term residential units. Affordable housing is often reduced just to be efficient, and this creates a generic appearance, a lack of individuality, and prevents the tenants from developing a personal relationship with their home. Instead, let's activate the street fabric through material design to entice the neighborhood inside. Modular design can standardize the construction process and reduce costs. What if these volumes could be fabricated in a local boatyard, bringing jobs locally, airlifted from a barge from the river and threaded onto two structural cores? Obviously, this scenario might be beyond reality, but modular repetition creates a cost-effective construction solution. This geometry creates a modular design that perforates the skyline. It dissolves the unrelenting glass tower, typology of the contemporary high-rise, and the perforation allows for light and air to pass more freely, reducing the urban canyon effect that's found downtown. We know time outdoors and exposure to nature creates a higher standard of living and improves overall mental health. To benefit both the tenants and the climate, every surface just needs to be intensive and extensively planted, reducing the solar heat gain, service runoff. These green spaces would be a mix of public and commercial and some for tenants only. Let's level the playing field. Both amenities, material and psychological, for affordable housing should rival those of the millionaires. Improving the minimum requirements for all income brackets would initiate a shift in how developers can create properties. We can't stop the millionaire one-upsmanship, but we can raise the bar for everyone so it does not need to equate to material expense. Following these principles created this tower for 5 WTC. The lower volume has at least 85,000 square feet of commercial space that could be combined with a more transient population for live-work. And then the tower could easily function as a duplex type. Meeting the minimum requirements continues the status quo. A multifaceted design approach is required to change how properties are developed in New York City. Designing and ultimately building to be environmentally, emotionally, socially, and economically positive can create the seismic shift required to reset the approach to affordable housing. Thank you.
The Greens have it.
Office of Things.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lane Rick with Office of Things. Also here is my partner, Ken Bowie. I want to start our talk by discussing density. Key to New York City's ability to house every single one of its residents is going to be its ability to make high-quality housing in its dense but limited amount mass. So this is part of what makes pencil towers like 432 Park and countless others that we're all familiar with. So egregious. They command our resources. They hoard our skyline in construction laborers, in DOB plan examiners, in physical materials, not to mention our cultural preoccupations. But they house very few people. In fact, even fewer permanent residents. 432 Park actually houses fewer people than the mid-rise buildings that it replaced. And with the sprawling floor plates laid out into apartments of some 7,500 square feet, they are designed to be as spread out as possible. We can increase the population of the tower by simply breaking the floor plan into 8 HPD conforming 2-bedroom apartments. The small building footprint actually becomes uniquely accommodating because every apartment will have adequate, well, not just adequate, but ample light and air. Now this is a plan that is not just about increased density, but an increased efficiency. Further, in the face of tightened resource chains and a changing climate, these towers become a waste of materials on very, very few people. We should expect more of our resources, and they should house more people. With the same structural and constructed mass, we could house, in fact, many, many more people. As it stands, 432 Park has 104 units across 96 floors. By reallocating this into normal apartments, you could house 750 units. Okay, we'll keep going in any case. This is not just a blueprint for 432 Park itself, but is actually something that you could start to use as a way to rethink every single other pencil tower through the city skyline across Billionaires Row. This could become a skyline of New York that is not to wealth and excess, but is actually a skyline that represents affordability and a dedication to housing the people who live in this city. And so, with that, we propose building a new 432 Park at 5 World Trade Center. You can save on the design fees, you can improve the mechanical and structural systems, you can make guinea pigs of the hyper-rich who bought into the idea in the first place and improve it in its second iteration, and you can recast this towering symbol of excess into a powerful symbol of affordability and resourcefulness.
All right, the cars. Oh my goodness. I think that is a blanket green. I'm not sure we've got a single red. Okay, all right. 432 Park number 2, here we come. 432-2. All right, I'm gonna come back to that one and Mark Hooters.
Hello, I'm Mark Hooters, and I've done some short apartment buildings, and we just won a project to tear down an elevated expressway in Syracuse and convert it into an urban boulevard with affordable housing. So I wanted to find a format of a taller building that was sort of a lower cost to try and get some of those costs down. And, you know, just like the previous presenter, we looked at some of these super tall buildings. All the units are incredibly expensive, incredibly large. If you look a little bit shorter in height, the cost of those buildings come down, and they have a lot more units in them. So we thought that was a really good clue. The super talls, 80, 90 stories, have big, heavy wind loads on them that require this incredibly expensive structural system. You can't make a profit on them unless you charge $20 million, $10 million. The short buildings don't have that big, hefty extra expense. So with larger floors, they actually have lower cost units in a lot of them. So our proposal was to go a little bit lower, 60 stories. We have about 1,000 affordable units. We have a larger floor plate that fits more units per floor. We have a green roof, some public spaces. We have a clear span space for an auditorium, and our lower floors are commercial. One of the biggest problems with affordable housing is the annual maintenance budget, elevators, mechanical systems. So we're thinking the lower floors are commercial space that's leased. The profits help pay for the annual operating budget of the building, rather than the residents paying for it.
I think the older skyscrapers of New York City are still some of the best in the world. The Art Deco period is incredible base, middle, and celebratory top. So we tried to do sort of a slimmed down modern age version of an Art Deco top. We don't want the residents to have expensive utility bills. We wanted a thermally efficient, sustainable building. So we have a thermally efficient facade. We're thinking of using 3-story tall modular facade panels that are not all glass, because that's not efficient, that are prefabricated off-site and hoisted into place to lower costs. I'm a big believer in affordable home ownership. I've run into people whose parents got into the Mitchell-Lama program. It changed the course of their family, and those kids have now grown up, are now successful developers, they're successful real estate agents. It changed everything about their future. So this is our perspective. Again, we wanted a building that fit into sort of the older New York City skyline, but was still contemporary. You can kind of see glowing at the bottom, the green roof, and the skylights for the big auditorium. And, you know, the final slide is, the first affordable housing project I worked on, I was told, make it look like it fits into the neighborhood, not an oddball building, because you don't want to stereotype the people walking out of the front door and stigmatize them. They are part of the neighborhood. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
The carbs. The echo. That's the Greens have it. Overwhelmingly. Okay, all right.
Work in progress, and work in progress is actually presenting in person. Contrary to my slide.
How's it going? I'm Omar.
My name is EJ.
We're both just grad students here in the city, so we're happy to share our presentation with you all.
Can you speak into the mics, folks?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
This proposal for 5 World Trade Center stands for a provocation and critique of the dialogue between naive altruism of housing activists and the 5 World Trade Center committee, as well as the other underlying issue of New York City's glass curtain wall skyline. Disrupting the current collection of glass boxes that have replaced Yamanashi's original Twin Tower, our project takes a formal elevation that pays homage to public housing projects throughout the city. However, the material transition from conventional brick, often used in public housing, to glass masonry used in MVRDV's Crystal House highlights the oxymoronic nature of placing affordable housing in the city skyline of luxury glass blocks.
So while activists argue for 100% affordable housing at the 5 World Trade Center, it is necessary to question what the glass boxes of New York City skyline stand for. If used in affordable housing, glass facades create transparency into the intimate spaces of populations vulnerable to exploitation and unwanted spectatorship by mega real estate tycoons and New York's essentially elite. The scaffolding within our proposal intentionally is left, as well as the jaggedness of the facade and its material translation. They both represent the fact that trying to please all parties will lead to a stalemate. Our problematizations therefore question whether or not we genuinely intend to tackle housing in America, or if instead this stands as merely a symbolic gesture. Apologies for the ordering of the images and whatnot, but
So we purposely left the material of a glass brick as a metaphor for speech of we we don't want to expose people who are already out there in the terms. And also part of the design was including the scaffolding to represent that this is not, will be able to finish if we are proposing the way that we're proposing. So, thank you.
The cards. Light and fortified green. Green. The greens have it.
And we're gonna take a slight, we're gonna fix the echo.
Is the echo?
Yes.
Echo is fixed. Okay. I don't hear an echo.
All right, on to the next.
Skipping Rob and Joel and Benji.
Hi everyone, I'm Joel McCullough, and I work with Benji Octagon. And this will be brief, so just kind of, yep, speak closer. Okay, is that better? Yeah, great. So instead of spending $1.2 billion to build 5 World Trade Center, we propose to use existing office space in the vicinity as affordable housing. In 1 World Trade alone, there's currently over 250,000 square feet of space for rent. At apartments ranging from 400 to 1,000 square feet, we estimate that there could be 2 to 5 times as many affordable apartments as those offered by 5 World Trade Center between various adjacent buildings. Architecture has the ability to affect policy if done right. And $1.2 billion is a lot of money, a few 100 million cups of coffee. Next slide. Former architecture is irrelevant if it does not respond to social issues. Next slide. It is not enough to do nothing. Architecture is messy, chaotic, and requires exhaustive negotiation. Next slide. We should challenge our assumptions and existing zoning limitations in skyscrapers. Next slide. Housing is situated within a network of policies, resources, infrastructures, and interrelationships. And daycares are an example of social infrastructure, one that is crucial in how affordable housing may be better supported in the city. Final slide. Instead of a tower in the site, we propose a public park and an affordable daycare, notational form, to serve the new residents. Nothing is resolved. Instead, we must propose more questions and possibilities and negotiations for design.
All right, the cards. And this is a closer one this time, but I think the Reds have it. UE architecture.
Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberger with UE Architecture. So taking inspiration from the September 11th memorial and how it provides emotional support to the victims, the family, and the families in the city, we focused our design around the idea of communities, which is also meant to support the future tenants of 5 World Trade Center. So we propose to incorporate these programmatic elements to cultivate and reinforce the communities both amongst the tenants and their neighbors. So we undermined the typical apartment building layout, the upper left here, and took lessons from townhouses. We stripped the apartments of their anonymity and broke up hallways to open views and to common areas. So at the tower roof, we proposed a garden space open to the sky, surrounded by glass to minimize any winds. We intentionally leave the architecture quite minimal because, as you have with all the communal gardens around the city, it's really the neighbors and the people who live there and use it who bring it to life. On a typical floor, units are arranged in two L-shaped wings, and between them there's a diamond-shaped atrium with a continuous circuitous path. The path is used across the common space and also then to come to the city. On every fourth floor, we propose to have communal apartments, so shared living, shared kitchen, shared dining. On the level above, we propose gardens and greenhouses for year-round use. The greenhouse is situated along the south end of the walkway between the two sets of apartments wings, where they can get plenty of daylight. The two top floors of the base include more apartments, but these units were arranged should be occupied by those with greater physical needs because we incorporated ramps to go down to lower levels. The idea being that should elevators become dysfunctional at any time, these people have a way and not get stuck on the lower floors. The healthcare clinic, daycare center, and outdoor space located on the mezzanine floors. These would be connected directly with Liberty Park, and they're leaving an outdoor space which could be used for a farmer's market, and where the tenants, if they don't choose to eat all the food they grow inside, they could sell them at the farmer's market, connecting with the larger community. At the ground floor, the job center, pharmacy, supermarket, and which would be accessible from the street as well as from inside. So again, connecting beyond just the servicing both people outside the building and who live there. So with this design, this is really meant to be an accumulation of ideas on how to foster multiple overlapping communities for those who live at 5 World Trade Center and hope to contribute to a truly livable city.
And the curves. We have a divided house. Everyone's going to matter here. But I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The Greens have it! Up next, Ariel and Lee. Ariel's actually our last in-person presentation. It's kind of like open mic night with architects.
Everybody, so where do we start and what's right for this site? I think we need to consider what's going to ignite the public's imagination about what's possible here and how do we galvanize support for an 100% affordable project. To start, I think we need to remember that how did we get here, and this site is imprinted into our memories as the site of the Twin Towers. We're reminded of that every year when on September 11th, 2 beams of light shoot up into the sky. So I'd like to propose that we create a sibling building to One World Trade by just turning it on its head. It also just so happens that because of the way the site is organized, it straddles the original site of the Twin Towers. So this 100% affordable building will also symbolically balance One World Trade, which is a building just full of corporate headquarters, and instead this will be a civic statement of what's possible here. It's also important to realize that sibling buildings isn't really something new in New York. Actually, there's quite a few of them. The El Dorado and the Majestic are two up on the Upper West Side. Deutsche Bank Center, formerly known as Deutsche Bank Center and American Copper Building are two others. And I would go next. And I think, one could even argue that this is an emerging trend. Greenpoint Landing is getting two twinning buildings. The 11th, if it's ever completed, will also be a kind of sibling building. And, like it or not, on the Williamsburg waterfront, there's going to be a collection of sibling buildings that are attached at the hip. I also think that this upside down form just makes good sense. You can have a collection of studios and one bedrooms on the lower floors, and then moving up to the top, your family units with 3 and 4 bedrooms. Also, by having the smallest footprint on the ground, we're able to maximize public space, and you can imagine that even this ground could now be more of a public park. So I'd like to say that, the 100% affordable 5-year-old trade could turn our notion of what's possible in New York real estate on its head. And at the end of the day, I think could be something that is iconically New York, and especially suited for this site.
Okay, all right. It's not unanimous, but the Greens definitely have it. We're getting a second World Trade Center and a second Fourth Nation Park. With that, we are through all of the in-person presentations. So I guess we should poll again. Do we want to go ahead and go into the videos? We obviously started a little later than we wanted to. Or do we want to peruse the videos later at your own leisure? They are some really great videos. It is 8 or 9 of them. Okay, so what I'm proposing is, and we'll figure it out at the end, but we just go straight to the videos, and we might stop the stream so that we can.
Well, we can do the middle with Carol.
Oh, we might get it to work? Okay. But I'd say if we should prioritize the sound here, and not on Zoom. Great. All right. Well, in that case, everybody get a drink of water. We've got cups. It's a little warm in here. Make a little on yourself. It'll take a 5 minutes.
Well, I wanted to talk Philip because I think a lot of us have here as architects treating this sort of philosophically. Not having their kind of force, grasp, building their service. In a way, it's kind of depressing because it's like even the people we need, whose help we need, they don't have it. And you hope that what they will say is so in a way there are a few but some of them are kind of making a point, which I think we need, in a way that's always the path. You should say a few words there. Very well. No, this is very well. But to give the perspective of the community. And it does seem that a couple of people don't understand. like to do is engage the people that are here. You know, you guys can watch the additional videos at home, I think, and we're sorry for the people who are watching, who are at home and don't get the videos, but I think it'd be nice to have a conversation here. So we have Carol Lambert. Carol, you'd like to come up? We're going to have the panel sit down. Yeah. And we'd also like to have questions from the audience, just to have an open conversation. But we also want... Michael, you got this comment.
Okay. Well, first we'd just like to say, on behalf of the Coalition for 100% Affordable by World Trade Center, thank you so much for all the architects and designers who put the time and effort. Let's give everyone a round of applause. I'm here with Carol Lambert, who's the former executive director of the Settlement Housing Fund here in Lower Manhattan, who's, I think, produced maybe 2,000 or 3,000 units, more than 80, I know it's somewhere in the thousands, 8,900 units of affordable housing in her lifetime. And so we're going to comment on, you know, some of the designs and also allow there to be questions and things and open the mic just so we engage everyone who came out tonight. But I, as a member of the coalition, I wanted to just say that I appreciated all of the philosophical thinking that architects did tonight about their profession, about their role in such of a project, because I think that is also, in a way, what we as activists and members of the public are doing, is trying to understand what is our role in this process. For people who don't know, there was one bid for a residential development here. This was basically a one bid RFP. So in that type of environment where it's power, the Cuomo administration, Larry Silverstein, it's not just about presenting, you know, designs, it's also about using our advocacy, our actions, our discussion about the designs as a way to interrogate, I guess, both the profession of architecture and also activism. So I just wanted to say I appreciated all that, and just as much as I appreciated some of the designs that were thinking practically about what could be achieved, like, you know, whether the absolute height is necessary, what should be the quality of affordable housing. But I'm not a professional. Carol is, so I'll let her talk a little bit about what she maybe took out of tonight and what she is hoping that architects and designers will continue to do as we contemplate this 5 World Trade Center idea.
Hi everybody. I'm sort of a housing geek. I've used every program over, I guess, 6 decades now, and advocated and maybe wrote a few amendments to various housing acts so they would work in New York. Our costs are astronomical. It's very, very difficult. You have to go through so many versions of a pro forma in order to make something feasible. But I was so excited to be asked to be part of the coalition for the idea of creating affordable housing with preferences for 9/11 survivors and first responders, and to achieve diversity, I think is the most beautiful message we could have for 5 World Trade Center. I love architecture, and I fall in love with these designs, and they're beautiful. But as far as so far, and you all are going to change everything, affordable housing has not won design contests. And if you ask the tenants, you understand, they don't want to have an 8 by 10 bedroom. They want the cost to go into rooms and amenities. I wish we could have both, and with the young people advocating, I hope, and it's thrilling to see the kind of outpour of design ideas that came here tonight and in the contest that you have. So as a housing advocate and somebody who's gotten stuff built with all sorts of effort, I mean, I would tell my staff, this could take between 6 months and 30 years, the ideas would matter. But we were the first to build mixed income housing and redevelop the Bronx when everybody said the Bronx was burning and nobody would ever want to live here. For 900 apartments, this was 1989. We got 15,000 applications, including 10% market rate, 30% formerly homeless, 40% very low, 20% middle. I'd like to see something like that for everybody who can't afford market rate housing should have that, should be supported so they can have a decent home and a decent living. And I love the philosophy, the passion that I hear in this room, and I can't encourage you more. Some of the photos and some of the things I've seen are absolutely beautiful. And so, yeah, everything needs to be a compromise, alas. And we got to get this done one way or another and make sure it satisfies the vision that we have for a wonderful use for this 5 World Trade Center site. I don't know. Is that enough?
Yeah, so I think we're going to, open up for questions, maybe to other, but I think we're also going to see if we have one, Victoria can speak on the Zoom if that's possible. So we can cue that up and then open up for questions, I guess, either to us or to other of the architects. So yes. Maybe you can come up here.
One of the narrative threads that I think I detected in a lot of these presentations is that asking architects to change policy or swim against the stream on policy is kind of missing the point. And if we had a mandate to design 100% affordable housing here, we'd have architects lined up around the block, doing $250,000 presentations. So this is more about policy and money than anything else. I mean, it strikes me as a bit like if the government wants to build a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and goes to a shipyard to build it, and the shipyard designs a ship to save the dolphins instead of launch nuclear missiles and fighter planes, they're going to go find another shipyard. How do we change the underlying policy imperative, the underlying allocation of resources, and the underlying math to make go away what sounds like a fundamentally wrong-headed policy that poorly serves the community and the public, and change it to what on the merits it ought to be?
Well, it's important for people to know that the RFP for 5 World Trade Center privileged financial return over everything else. Although interestingly, we've now learned that the tax abatement for the building is going to be double the ground rent. So if it's only financial return if we think about it in terms of a way to funnel money from the port from one pot to another to the Port Authority, where the government as a whole. Now that's not to say we wouldn't want a tax abatement for affordable housing, but if we're going to give it a total tax abatement. Well, they told us they thought it was going to be about $23 million per year, where the ground rent would be $12.5 million per year. So I think that would be the first thing, is that, obviously it would have been interesting if architects and designers were indeed asked, let's come up with a broader RFP for affordable housing, for aesthetics. I think a lot of people would have been engaged, especially if they didn't necessarily have to prove the other corollary that they already had the ability to finance a $1 billion building, which was a requirement of the RFP, that any development team had to prove that they could have done a skyscraper on this scale before, which is probably part of the reason why you only have one viable residential bid in the end. But yeah, what I wanted to add was that, what is interesting is the architects and designers were leaders after September 11th. There were so many organizations. They was called New York New Visions. Some people may be familiar with it, New York New Visions, which was a group of, I think they had like 200, 300 designers and architects, all who wanted to have input on this process. And so, in a way, I feel that the groups here is kind of an echo of that. And a lot of those people just kind of, I think, just gave up. Because they're, I mean, even the winning Daniel Libeskind plan, the vaunted Daniel Libeskind, was sidelined from the actual development of the site, including all of the commercial buildings. So I think maybe what needs to happen is that if the architects feel totally disempowered, which is kind of the message I'm getting a little bit today, no offense, but I feel that a lot of the proposals kind of reflect a profession, especially a younger generation, who don't feel like they have or don't feel maybe that their profession is capable of that, who are asking for it. So maybe the public needs to demand that architects and technical people be incentivized to develop this vaunted, you know, we're supposed to, people are telling us we need to produce so much housing, but where are the ideas coming from? I don't know. Yeah.
I think we're ready.
We're ready to do Victoria? Okay, great.
You're right.
Victoria first. Are we in the right?
No, stay there. You're not going to
Can you hear me? You can hear? Okay, great. So I actually can't hear you, so I'm just gonna go, and Todd, I can see you, I think. I could see you before. Great, continue. So you can let me know if I need to stop. But anyways, I just wanted to say thank you everyone so much. It was an amazing, amazing show. The remarks I had written were for the beginning, and now that I've seen all these amazing projects that have been put forth, I really just want to highlight how grateful we are as a coalition for the interest and the dedication and the understanding of the need of our community. So let me see, so the coalition was founded by Jill Goodkind, Mariama James, and Taylor Banning. I also want to, of course, extend my thank you so much to the New York Review of Architecture and City Group for having put this together. And thank you so much, Todd, for bringing us together with the architects. As I won't go over the history of this bid because I'm sure you know it already, but I do want to express that the members of the coalition came together to say that they wanted to put an 80-story luxury apartment building, and to say no, because we need and deserve 100% affordability, 100% affordable housing. And when we first said that, we were literally laughed at. But because this is no laughing matter, we have lost thousands of affordable units in Lower Manhattan in the last 20 years, and we're all being priced out. And actually, one of the founding principles of the LMDC, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, was to build affordable housing. So this is clearly not just an issue of a need that we have, but a question of justice as well. We were told that it was safe to come back after 9/11. So people came back. And when we came back, the government wanted us to come back so we would help rebuild. And we did. And now we're being priced out because all these luxury apartment buildings are going up around us, and the working people and the low-income people are being priced out of here. So this is truly our opportunity, a place where there's public land and public money financing this. But happily, we have actually made a lot of progress as a coalition. Yes, we were first laughed at, but after that, we've actually gotten a commitment from our representative, Jerry Nadler, to help us find federal funding for this. And we're actually working with, and I believe maybe with us in the audience, Jared, here we go, Jared Delane, who has agreed to help us come up with a feasibility study, which is amazing and help us see how we can actually make this happen. And your designs are also going to show us the alternatives and show us the desire that our professionals have to actually do something like this, something truly valuable. But we can't do this without your help. It is a grassroots movement, so we do need everybody to help us. And one way you can do that right now is, if you haven't yet, you can go to our website, It's affordabletower5.com. And there is a button, big button there that says petition, and you just click on there and you sign our petition. If you have done that, you can send that link to 5 of your friends or post it on social media, but just really keep showing that there is not only a desire, but a call for it, that this is what we want. Again, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you and to every member of the coalition who has been really dedicated in making this come so far. And thank you all for being here tonight and for submitting these amazing designs. And I can't wait to see how much further we get. We're going to get all the way, 100%, I'm sure.
Do we have any other
Okay,
questions?
so my sound is off. I can't hear, so I'm going to say thanks again, everyone. Good night, and looking forward to the next round.
Okay, we have a question of Justine.
Thanks a lot. Sorry. So my name is Justine Kucha, and I'm part of Coalition, clearly, for 100% affordability. And I can't tell you how excited I was to look at all these different designs and the call to action on your all's part as architects in this field, whether you're in school now or you're actually in the field working. It was amazing and amazing choices, and you really are aware of the dearth, the absence of affordable housing, especially in Manhattan and Lower Manhattan. And this is such a great thing. And to answer what you were saying, Todd, that's kind of what made me raise my hand when you were talking about the tax abatement that's being given. So that is something that is happening all throughout New York. They are doing tax abatements for affordable housing, but the affordable housing is only 20%. And that's not affordable housing. They're getting tax abatements to build luxury housing. And I guess my call to action to you is, besides going to our website, signing the petition and pushing it around, because it is vital, I think, because the 5 World Trade Center is a public land, a public site, a historic site where the World Trade Center, all that atrocity happened. It should be 100% affordable, but it should be the model for the rest of the city. And the rest of the city doesn't have to be 100%, because that's a lot, but it should be 20, 20, 20, 20. Low, moderate, middle, upper middle, luxury. And I don't understand why that is not financially possible. I don't think it makes any sense to be getting tax breaks for that, because we should all be living together. We talk about diversity, we talk about getting economic and racial diversity. The best way to do that, I think one of you said it, is to bring people into the same house, same building, ride the same elevators, share the same common spaces. So all of that goes together. And I guess that wasn't a question, it was a statement, and I'm sorry, but thank you. And please do what you said.
Okay, Mark, can you come up? It's a very quick. Oh, we please need the mic so that people know. Sorry about that. Even if it's one line.
I guess my question is, because this all reminded me that where this all started. It's almost like I hadn't thought so clearly of the context of the World Trade Center, and those so many designs from so many great architects at the number. So, but how did we end up with? This is really a history question. How did we end up with only one of these towers being housing at all? Because if they all were, that's 7 times as much housing as even what we're talking about today.
Well, I don't know if you know.
Well, I know a little. I'm a historian. There's different ways to look at it. There's the politics of Pataki versus Bloomberg. There's historically like a Lower Manhattan office lobby versus a Midtown office lobby with different divisions. Bloomberg wanting housing, but
worried that the Lower Manhattan would never have enough.
yeah. And then obviously, the World Trade Center did destroy so much square footage of office space, so there was like a goal of 10,000 kind of, and people wanted to meet that, but then even that became unnecessary. You also had the financial crisis, which meant that these big floor plates that were intended for these investment banks, which is the reason why 3 and 4 World Trade Center and 2 World Trade Centers not even built, that became unnecessary after these investment banks exploded. So there's a lot of factors that went into it, but housing, there was massive incentivization of housing in Lower Manhattan. The population below Chambers Street has tripled since September 11th because of subsidies and tax incentives, but it just, almost none of it is affordable. In fact, there's been a reduction in affordable. So housing was incentivized just the wrong type.
But also the housing that was incentivized expired, because those tax abatements lasted 15 or 20 years, and so now we're reaping the rewards, and I put that in air quotes, tax abatements that went away. So now everybody who's in affordable housing has to get out, jump into luxury.
Yeah, Jessica's pointed out that there are some expirations on these tax abatements. But Carol, you wanted to?
A lot of the buildings were, they thought 30 years of affordability would do it, and then the 30 years are up, and a lot of the developers want to make a profit. They want to convert to luxury use. 30 years goes fast, so at least we've learned most of the programs are requiring permanent affordability now. And we have to insist that permanent affordability is part of the plan that we develop.
Thanks. Two related questions. The first one is that the kind of tax abatements you're describing, even for market rate housing, at least in the immediate years after 9/11, put some restraint on developers by saying that if you do 80-20, even the 80, it becomes a baseline. You know, those market rate apartments, that you're limited to increases above that in line with rent stabilization. My point is that it's an example of how far we have regressed on this, that near as I can tell, there's no discussion whatsoever about that now. These people are getting a tax abatement worth double their ground rent, and yet there is, first of all, no restraint on what they can charge in terms of market rates, and no restraint on how much they can raise above that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't believe there's any legal limit on the rent at Five World Trade Center.
Or increasing even, I think that's correct. But the second part of that is, nor is there any limit on how much they can increase above that market rate, which there was, under 421J there was. The other thing, Mariam has pointed out a bunch of times, the defining difference about this project is it is public land with public money behind it. Federal law says that you cannot use public money or public land to create segregated housing. And yet market rate housing will necessarily be segregated along racial lines and along other lines. Is there any thought about filing suit in federal court to stop this thing before they break ground just on that basis?
Well, you know, one of the members who's here tonight, Mariama James, has done actually a lot of demographic analysis on how this community board, or this community district 1 of Lower Manhattan is one of the most segregated in the city. And it hasn't been really getting better. And so all of this subsidy for market rate housing with the Liberty bonds and all these tax incentives and anything don't seem to be addressing it, only making it worse. So if we do take the Housing Act seriously, you would think that basically all public land should be devoted toward desegregation.
That's not what the laws say. I mean, the urban renewal laws, the statutes just required new uses that the cities were able to determine. And the fact is there's not really enough federal money to support 1/10 of the need. And so while we're advocating for, I mean, I'm going crazy thinking way out of the box kind of financing to make this happen as a special place and something that wouldn't deplete the whole city's affordable housing money. So something way out of the box, but it shouldn't be that hard. We should have at least quadruple the housing budget from all levels of government, and that's what we have to keep advocating for in every bone of our body.
I would suggest, even if it's not a legal action, a narrative point to emphasize is that market rate housing is always segregated housing. It just is. So very few people of color live in market rate luxury housing, and developers can do whatever they want, but when the land is publicly owned and it's been acquired with public subsidies, will be developed with public subsidies, there's a further point to be made about you are using taxpayer dollars to create segregated housing. And if that is not straight up illegal on its face, then also.
So yeah, the comment is that the market rate housing is essentially segregated. So we have more, any more questions? Any more? Yeah, Mike. Okay. Does that mic? I think that might be maybe off.
Okay, I'll make it quick, but I guess I just wanted to, as an architect and part of the, I guess, supporting this design effort, I wanted to address some of the, there's a understandable degree of skepticism about design and architecture, and we saw that in several of the presentations today, and I think it's interesting to see that actually a lot of the architects are a lot more skeptical about the capacity of design to do anything than a lot of the activists. And I understand where that skepticism comes from. I felt it myself as an architect. But I also think the way in which housing is currently made in the city is a political project. The real estate power is supported by the government, it's supported by the political will, and there is no political will to make affordable housing today. And so the question is, what's going to erode or deconstruct the existing kind of political structure that's only making luxury housing in the city? And I think it's going to take a fight. It's going to take organizing. And I think we are inspired by the activists that are organizing to make this 100% affordable housing. And I think that images, architecture, and design, those kind of ideological pursuits or cultural pursuits, have a place within that fight. And I think that's a way of looking at the role of architecture within this and not being completely disenchanted with the profession. So I think there is a...
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask... Can you use the mic? Okay. And I just wanted to say that I would love for there to be some pushback maybe about this idealism that I have, but I don't see it as idealism.
I just wanted to ask to all of the architects, I guess, in architecture school, do you see design and do you see it as completely a separate discipline and practice from the economic frameworks behind housing and affordability? Are you just not taught to think as a developer?
Correct.
And then what is that experience like when you enter into the workforce and you're confronted with this? I don't know, what is it like to be in architecture school?
Mike, you wanted to take that?
We only have 2 minutes. We can't answer.
All right. Michael, do you want to give it correct?
Can I give a plug for?
Yes, absolutely.
I would love just to say, get people excited. Okay. So Michael, what I would say to you is, it's really important that every single person in this room realize that you have a voice. And whatever you believe in is important and it's valuable, and you speak and say it, because nothing is going to change unless each one of you does something and steps up and stands up. So the political will and all that, the political will is just listening to the loudest voice, okay? Our politicians, they listen to whoever's louder or whoever has the deep pockets of money. So the real estate interests have the deep pockets of money, but there are a lot more people than there are deep pockets of money. So the people have power. You just need to be persistent. You have to be okay with no. A lot of the time, what do we hear all the time? You can't do this. We kept going. Oh, that's so silly. What did Victoria say online? Laughed at us. No. You keep going. If it's right, if it's important, you keep going. So I don't think you're idealistic at all to say that there's hope there. And I guess what I would say to each one of you in your schools and everything else, you have ideals. And I forget your name, but I love your pants. Yeah, sorry, I love your pants. But and well as your design. Brad. So Brad, no, keep going, because you guys and other people who are challenging the status quo, keep challenging it, but don't be silent. Don't be silent, because that is how they win. Whoever it is that's they win with your silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so we will close, but I think part of the reason we engaged architects and designers because the World Trade Center was the time when architects and designers were asked to inspire the country, inspire the world, and create a new New York. That was really the question. So we thank a new generation, or maybe the old generation trying again, for giving that one more go. And we're going to make the best of it to achieve with some of your ideas tonight. So thank you so much. And yeah, you want anything more? No, that's it. That's okay.
City Hoop's going to have Iron Pizza if anybody wants to come by and hang out. We figured that'd be easier than trying to work.